Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to another episode of The Punter. I'm Trevor Harris alongside Gordon Watson. Flash to his mates. We're going to try and find you some value on a whole assortment of markets. And of course, we have to start with football. Flash, another really interesting weekend in the Barclays Premier League. Another incident where Man City have dropped points. Roberto Mancini's lost his cool. Wouldn't even shake hands with Tony Pulis afterwards. There is a school of thought, however, from some experts I've heard, that says that's 1 point gained rather than 2 dropped. How do you look at it from City's point of view?
That's 2 points dropped. Anywhere else in the season, I said, like, if it was in the first half of the season, it would have been a point gained. But at this stage of the season, you cannot drop any points. You've got to look to win every single game because you've got to assume that your closest rival, in this case Man United, they could well go and do that. And
what did you think of Tony Pulis' well, he was fine, but Mancini's damning criticism of Stoke, saying that they were basically roughouse team and they muscled City out of it. Any truth in those kind of allegations or not for you?
None at all. I didn't think there was hardly a bad tackle in the whole game, and probably the worst one went unpunished in Gareth Barry getting in late on
Whelan.
On Whelan, yeah, because I mean that was a potential ankle breaker. Apart from that, no, I thought it was a really clean game that was just well contested, and I just think he jumped onto the Stoke bandwagon because I've seen Stoke a lot more physical than they were at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean obviously Manchester United pushed out the second only on goal difference.
Yeah.
They played tonight. We'll talk about that game in a minute. But if you were Alex Ferguson sitting at home on Saturday evening watching that game from the Britannia, and someone had offered you a draw, as far as City were concerned at the start, you'd probably have taken it.
Oh, and yeah, Alex Ferguson would have took anything other than an overwhelming Man City win. But I tell you, we went 1-0 with quarter of an hour to go,
yeah.
And then the Man City are the ones that actually got the luck with the deflection. Otherwise, Begovic would have probably saved it.
And Manchester United, of course, have got a real chance tonight to make a statement, go back 3 points clear. And we'll show you the odds for that game coming up shortly. There should be goals, I would imagine. It's a great chance for United to push on again here.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, and we were just saying that when Man United get a sniff of the Sunday roast, they all want to sit round the table and eat. They don't pass up the opportunity of a free meal, which it is tonight. Fulham have got one of the worst away records. Man United have got the opportunity to eradicate a 4-goal deficit regarding the goal difference between them and Man City. They can do it all in one go tonight.
I think Fulham, it's just 8 goals on their travels. I think even the world's ugliest man scores more often than that. Let's have a look at the table if we can in a moment. The Premier League table after the weekend, because there are so many little subplots. It's not just the Man United, Man City. We've got the race for the Champions League spots. Arsenal seem to be winning that at the moment. And, of course, mass is happening at the bottom as well. It's a fantastic end to the season, potentially.
Oh, it is. I mean, because now, all of a sudden, you've obviously got the two boys, or the two big clubs that are fighting out at the top. And then you've got the 3 London clubs. You've now got Newcastle in the mix after their great win yesterday at West Brom. So they're now thinking that they may be able to dispose Chelsea. And if Tottenham don't kick on and start winning a few more games, Newcastle will think that they could probably catch Tottenham as well.
And look how the goal difference is beginning to even up as well. 50 for Manchester City, 46 for United. With this game in hand tonight, they could easily stick 5 past Fulham and suddenly 3 points better off and a better goal difference too.
Yeah, I know. Actually, I personally think it's curtains already for Man City. I think Man United have just waited in the wings, waited for Man City to slip up. They've slipped up once too often, and now Man United will show them a clean pair of heels.
Well, the top of the table we've seen is fascinating. From a punting point of view, it makes it really interesting. Flash has tipped up tipped up United for a long while, and they're now big odds on. It's almost as interesting, and if you support one of these clubs, nerve-wracking, at the other end of the Premier League, in the basement. We can have a little look at how things stand there. And fascinating weekend. A win for Wigan at Anfield, which no one predicted pretty much. Wolves are in free fall. Blackburn lost at Bolton. There was a lot of emotion around that match for obvious reasons. It's still tricky. I reckon Wolves, we pretty much think are down.
Gone. Finished.
What about Wigan, though, after Saturday?
Yeah, the problem is with Wigan, they don't score enough goals. I mean, yes, they got away. They went to Anfield and won, but that's no great shakes because Liverpool have only won 5 from 14 or 15 games. So
that's how close it is, Flash. Have a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, the big one for me is that Bolton now, in the adversity of what's gone on with Fabrice Muamba, I think that that's going to unify the whole of the club, the whole of the city, and that may well give them the spirit to go and find a survival tactic. So I would say that the bottom 3 in there now I think that they could be the ones that go.
And QPR have got the run-in from hell, haven't they? They didn't need that result at the weekend either, and especially they didn't need Seeley sent off. They got Arsenal at the weekend.
Exactly. I mean, we said this last week when we were sitting in these same chairs. The thing with Queens Park Rangers, you can't trust them. They've got good jigsaw pieces, but they don't fit together. And they're ill-disciplined. They just don't. They don't play as a team. So if you've got a team, you don't know if they're going to play, you don't know if they're going to finish the game, you just cannot trust them. So I would say that Queens Park Rangers have got a massive uphill task to get anything out of the Premiership.
All right, well, Rangers then we reckon are probably going to go down. Let's have a look at the betting then to win the title. Now, Manchester City, of course, were favourites for a long, long time in this market, not anymore. Manchester United are big odds on. If you followed Flash's advice earlier in the season, you'd have got odds against. They're now 2-5, and look how the layers have reacted to City dropping points at Stoke. 7-4 against now.
Yeah, and it's really big because Man United were as big as 7-2 around Christmas time, and Man City were around the 2-5. And the reason you're not getting 7-2 about Man City, when now they're flip-flopped, is because that Tottenham and Arsenal are no longer in the picture.
Right.
At Christmas, they were still giving you like 12-1 about Tottenham.
Yeah.
So Man United 2-5. I've seen worse investments, but again, if you're on at 7-2, or even if you're on the 2-1 that's been there near enough all season, then you don't want to get involved and you let it ride. If you're Man City and you thought, I fancy Man City, but I couldn't get involved because they've been 1-3 or 2s on all year, now's your time to get in, but I fancy it'll be in vain.
All right, let's have a look at tonight's game then. Manchester United against Fulham, 8 o'clock kickoff. Now, I'm assuming you don't fancy Fulham. So
no,
for punters,
yes.
When a team is big odds on as United are, the real question is, how do we get value? Do we go correct score? Do we go the under-over? Do we go first score? Or how do you approach a game like this? It's going to be one-sided according to the bookmakers.
Yeah, I'll definitely go over.
On the goals mark?
Yeah, I'd definitely be over 2.5, and I'd probably go over 3 as well. I would look maybe on the handicap, if it's different ones, say Manchester United, I think they'll win by at least 2 or 3 goals.
Right.
So I would give Fulham a head start. I'll definitely have like an interest in maybe 5-0. I'd even have a little interest in maybe 6 with a saver on 4. So 4, 5 and 6-0, and then you know that you're going to get plenty of value. Because if they get a smell of it, and they can get a couple of early goals, and I'm saying even 2-0 at half time,
yeah,
they're not going to take their foot off the gas, because the big thing tonight is not about winning the game, it's about how many you can score. So while you've got your opponent down, make sure you tread all over them. Yeah,
I quite fancy 6 actually for a small investment. You don't need much on if you're predicting that many goals or that kind of a scoreline. I mean, the stats for Fulham make terrible reading. In half a century at Old Trafford, they've won 1 game. They've lost their last 7 there. I think they've scored for the last 4. Every bit of information, every statistic points to a comprehensive United victory. And I think, having seen City drop points at the weekend, it's an even extra incentive to really rub it in their neighbours' faces.
Yeah, and the one thing you don't want to do is give Man United incentive. You give Man United incentive, they won't disappoint you.
Yeah.
They've done it 19 times. Course and distance winners. They are the governors at this stage of the season, and they've just slipped up at the wrong time, Man City.
Let's have a look at the market then as far as who's going to score tonight. Rooney's on a hell of a run. I think it's, 10 goals in his last 8.
Yeah.
Do you see him being something punters should get with tonight?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think you can't go... I mean, you're looking for first goal scorer, you're looking for a little bit of value, then maybe Danny Welbeck. We haven't got the team news in yet, but I think Danny Welbeck's always in and around in the box area for balls that get slid in or 1-2s. So at 4-1, he's quite good value. I'd put a line through the Fulham boys, because I fancy they'll be running towards their own goal.
It is Rooney and Welbeck up front. Flash.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Then I'm very interested in Welbeck at 4-1. I would also, maybe, I know it's not even on there, but I like Rio Ferdinand, because they have sometimes you have like funny sort of coincidences.
Yeah.
And it's just been said that he's going to sign a new contract.
Yes.
And how better to celebrate them with a goal. So Rio Ferdinand maybe at any time, or a first goal scorer. I think you'd probably get good odds on him.
Yeah, I mean, you saw on that graphic we just put up, there were big odds about pretty much any Fulham player. Podgorniak actually does have a bit of form against United. He scored for Zenit in the 2008 Super Cup when they beat United, but how many chances he's going to have tonight is another matter entirely.
Yeah, and he's a proper player as well. Yeah. I mean, I went on record earlier on in the year and saying that he was the type of player that was going to be showcased at Fulham, but could well be seen at Man United next year. He's a top 4 player for me, but so hopefully Man United will keep him quiet tonight. All
right, well, if you want to have more of a prolonged involvement with your betting, you don't fancy the first goal scorer market, we can have a look at the anytime goal scorer market. So if your selected player scores at any point at all, you will get paid, and because of that, obviously, the odds are shorter than they are for the first goal scorer. 8 to 13 Rooney. We're almost getting into Lionel Messi territory with those kind of prices, aren't we?
Well, we are, and again, I suppose with them 4 Man United players, only Berbatov wouldn't make much appeal. So
Yeah.
I would probably have an interest in all 3 of them, and on any given day, on a night when they need goals, then all 3 of them boys could well be seen on the score sheet come 10 o'clock.
Yeah, just to say, by the way, Javier Hernandez on the bench tonight, but every chance of coming on, and we know the kind of record he's got of scoring as a substitute. What do you think the impact of a United win, which we expect tonight, would be on the title race? Are those odds on United going to get even shorter from the 2 to 5 we showed earlier?
I think it depends on the size of the margin. I mean, yeah, I would say that you'd definitely be 1 to 4 if they win by, if they take over both advantage on being 3 points clear, and they take over the advantage of goals scored, then I would say that Man United are going to harden up. The only way that you're going to get better odds or them shortening is obviously if they drop points.
Okay, Flash,
I don't see that happening.
For the moment, thank you. I will be here, by the way, during the game to give you some in-play betting updates. That's it for part 1. More football coming up in part 2. Champions League and FA Cup in just a moment. You're watching The Punter with me, Trevor Harris, and Gordon Watson, Flash, as we know him. FA Cup, Flash. Let's have a talk about that, because we've got 2 games tomorrow night to complete the draw for the semi-final. In the outright market, it's really quite interesting, because we've got Liverpool already through, trying to add the FA Cup to the Carling Cup they've already got on the cabinet. Everton face a replay tomorrow. Tottenham, it's not a replay, it's the restaging of their game against Bolton. It makes it slightly tricky for punters, because we don't know the actual lineup yet for the last 4.
No, we don't, and that's why you're getting. If you do fancy Tottenham, then you are taking a chance on them actually getting through against Bolton, and then secondly, they already know that they're going to play Chelsea.
Yeah.
So they've probably got the hardest route in anyway, because whoever wins out the Chelsea-Tottenham game, they're going to be favourites for the final, and yet at the moment, Liverpool are the favourites. So again, Liverpool. I've been my tip all the way through, so I've got to stick with them. I don't want to jump ship, even though they're in turmoil in the league. I mean, Chelsea, they look a bit of value at 5 to 2. But again, Chelsea-Tottenham's a toss of the coin, isn't it?
Well, that's why I quite like Spurs at 3s. If you think they're going to get past Bolton, which I do, their price will be shorter. So if you fancy them, get on now.
Yeah, but there again, you have got a massive hurdle in Chelsea, obviously, in the semi-final. And that would worry me. But there again... Tottenham, Chelsea, we see it the other day. Tottenham were stronger than Chelsea for me.
Yeah.
I thought they were.
Yeah, I did too.
I thought that they ran out of ideas and they looked stale, Chelsea. Their times, I think they're 2 or 3 years past their sell-by date. That's the way it looks.
And I don't know if you agree with me, but I don't think the impact of Chelsea not qualifying for the Champions League, which looks like happening, has really hit home with some punters, because it's not so much the money, because we know their owner's got plenty of that. But as far as the players they'll be able to sign with no Champions League, a manager they'll be able to sign, and the players that might want to go. People will be looking at Mata and Sturridge and others.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I just think the whole thing with Chelsea is, and I've seen it over the last couple of games, of every reason why Robbie Di Matteo's not the right man. Because last week they were 1-0 up against Man City, had a chance to really take the game to them. They bottled it. They basically went all defensive, and they got what they deserved. And I was quite pleased that Man City came back and won 2-1, because it then showed the deficiency in Chelsea tactically. Again on Saturday, started the first half quite brightly, ran out of ideas, didn't have no tactical nous, and Tottenham put them to the sword. And on another given day, they could have won 2 or 3. All
right, well, let's have a look at both tomorrow's games, starting with the game at White Hart Lane. Tottenham-Bolton, there will be a bit of emotion around, of course, at White Hart Lane. Actually, before the horror incident with Muamba, it was a decent football match and pretty even too. Not just on the score was 1-1, but the game was pretty even.
Yeah, I tipped up the draw last time,
right.
and I'm going to go the same way again. And I think there'll be a replay needed in this game. And I do think it's down to not just sentiment, but I think it'll be down to there'll be a big buzz about the place, and Bolton will probably just find that extra yard to every ball. And Tottenham at the moment are not the same Tottenham. Nothing taken away from them because they are still a top 4 side, but I just think that Bolton, after what happened at the weekend as well by getting a win against their fierce rivals in Blackburn, I think they'll go there fully up for it.
Big price as well, 4-1 about the draw.
It
Now,
is,
on this show, you get 2 experts for the price of 1. We've got the bet butler, Nigel Seeley, on the line. How are you, Nigel?
I'm very well, guys. How are you?
Yeah, we're good. Do you concur with Flash here that it might not quite be the cakewalk for Tottenham tomorrow night that many are expecting?
No, I agree with him. I think it's going to be a tough game. I think, obviously, the Mohammed is going to be an uplifting thing for the Bolton players, and I think they'll give an extra impetus for the match. I think Bolton are great value, not only for the match, I think they're massive for the FA Cup. 40-1 team in the quarterfinals, only 6 teams left in it, and they're 40-1 to win it. If you look at current form, Liverpool are appalling. Chelsea are very, very average. Tottenham are all going downhill faster than Fran's clamour. And you've got Bolton there, who everybody's second favourite football team at the moment. And I think 40-1 on Bolton is huge value, and I think they can put an upsell.
Can you still play each way on that market, Nigel, or is it just win only now?
No, it's each way. It's a third 1-2. Some bookmakers, I think Coral are the only bookmaker offering a half one, so you can get each way, but they're shorter price on Bolton. But the 40-1 is generally around there. On the exchanges, it's about 44, but that's obviously win only. But yeah. I just think it's a big price. I like, to be fair, on the FA Cup itself, I've tipped Sunderland all along. At the beginning, obviously, when Martin O'Neill went out 50-1 at the start in the third round. I think they're a cracking bet tomorrow to beat Everton, and I think Bolton could cause an upset against Tottenham because I think the top 3 are vulnerable at the moment. I mean, the interesting point for me on this game, and obviously, I know Bolton were playing exceptionally well, but I personally think it's a bit of an injustice to Bolton that the game doesn't start at 41 minutes or whenever the game was suspended. I mean, I know there's rules about this thing, but this is nothing's ever happened like this in this situation. If Bolton were 1-0 up or 2-0 up, I think it's a bit of an injustice for them, really. I think it's it's very interesting. I don't see why they should start from the beginning, but I do think Bolton have got a great chance, and I think Tottenham, especially Liverpool and Chelsea at the weekend, the top 3 for me look far too short for FA Cup. I think this FA Cup is being priced up on previous history, and the big guns against probably the informed teams would be Sunderland and the bottom 3, Sunderland, Everton and Bolton. All
right, well, interesting actually, because if that had happened in Italy, they may well have started again from the 38th minute, whenever it was. They did things a bit differently. Let's move on to that second, it's a replay, isn't it? Sunderland versus Everton tomorrow night at the Stadium of Light. Flash, we've heard what Nigel said. Any views on Sunderland Everton?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you look at Sunderland Everton the same as you looked at Everton Sunderland. I mean, you cannot really pick between them. It'd be a really tight game. But as Everton have just come back from beating Swansea 2-0 at the Memorial, you're thinking to yourself, they are going to be full of hope. They're going to be... it is a toss of a coin game. It is one where you don't have any massive interest.
So outsider of 3, the draw is 11-5? Or
yeah, I mean, you could easily see this going all the way to penalties.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a game that it could be 1-1. I don't expect anyone to get blown away, so I'll say it's under 2.5 goals, and whoever wins then go and win it. But I would want to play under 2.5 and maybe keep the draw on my side as well.
All right, so much for the domestic cups. Let's talk about the Champions League, shall we? Because it's tomorrow night and Wednesday, and of course Chelsea are the sole British representatives, but interestingly, I reckon Benfica might beat them, and so do you.
Oh, they're an absolute knocker. For me, Benfica will take them to the cleaners, because the one thing that Benfica are all over the pitch is sharp, and the one thing that Chelsea are not sharp. They look mentally drained. They have got one game plan, and then after that, they're struggling. They're struggling in important areas as well. They've got no can opener, and I mean that by as in like a Modric or a Silva. Mata plays out too far wide, and the boys in front of him, they're too stationary. There's not enough movement going on ahead of him, and I don't think Di Matteo's got any tactical nous. So for me, Benfica. Yeah, I'll fancy them all the way.
And if you are thinking about backing Chelsea, just remember this. Their away form in the Champions League this season has been woeful. They lost to Bayer Leverkusen, they lost to Napoli, they only just drew with Genk. They haven't won a single game on the road in the Champions League this season. There are the odds for the tie tomorrow. That is not outright. That is the tie tomorrow at the Stadium of Light. 11-8, Benfica, whose home record domestically, Flash, played 11, won 10.
Yes.
And the home record in the Champions League this season, played 6, won 4, drawn 2.
Yeah, if you said to me, can you name the prices, prior to looking at that, I would have gone 4-6 and probably 3-1 Chelsea and 5-2 to draw.
Interesting. Right, let's bring the bet butler in. Nigel, Benfica, Chelsea. Do you share our Portuguese loving?
I do. I really do. I think there were 2-1 as well to qualify for the semi-finals. That is an absolute knocking bet as well, just to qualify for the tie.
I'll tell you what, you're going to have to tell me where you found that, because I only saw 7-5 earlier, Nigel.
Well, it was 2-1 when the draw was made, and we lumped on the twos. So I think it might be. I think that was the initial price what it was, but that is absolutely massive. I mean, I think that it's a pick-em tie for the two of them. I mean, it's just because Chelsea have become trendy again with the punters. But you look at the matches they've won. They've won against Leicester, they've won against Birmingham, and they won against the Napoli side that completely bottled it. When they played the big guns, when they played Man City, when they played Tottenham, they've been found wanting again. And this is a massive. You know, I think Paddy Power is 6-4 Benfica at the moment. That price will not be there in the morning. There'll be a massive gamble on Benfica, and it will just be the professional punters steaming into Benfica, and the guys in the betting shops and the tellers and £20 punters having back on Chelsea. There'll be no money for Chelsea at all. It'll be an absolute disaster for bookies if Benfica win this game. It'll be a sustained gamble tomorrow. That's absolutely certain.
Butler, I can't believe that they're not even odds on.
Well, I mean, the thing is, people will back Chelsea, those Flash, and it's a live TV game. People coming home, there will be 10s, 20s, 50s, 100s, all mounting up on Chelsea.
Not if you know anything about football.
Yeah, but what? Well, but the guys who have the lumpy on won't be betting with the English bookmakers. They'll probably be betting in Asia. They'll be betting, you know, if anyone walked into a shop and wanted 2 or 3 grand on Benfica, they'd probably be knocked back and they'd be cut. So just to use the information, but I think it's when British clubs play, it's like the England in the football in the domestic football, isn't it? People always back them, whatever they do.
Yeah, it's patriotic money, Nigel. We've got to stop you there for the moment because we've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll have motor racing, snooker, and golf because Tiger's on the prowl again. You're watching The Punter with myself, Trevor Harris, with Flash Gordon, and also, of course, with Nigel Seeley, our bet butler, who's on the phone with us tonight. We're going to talk F1 first of all, Flash, and I don't see too many that saw Fernando Alonso as the potential winner of the Malaysian Grand Prix. It always makes it, not say a lottery when it rains like that, but it does alter the dynamic, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. I mean, Neil Cole's one of our other presenters on here. He does the show The Grid, and he picked up Fernando Alonso at 80-1, him and Raikkonen both 80-1. Yeah, and he also said that there's normally a downpour within 25 laps of the start, and he got that a little bit wrong, but his whole ethics around his argument was spot on. It was almost a dream and a premonition.
Has that changed, Nigel? Has that changed your view of how the season might go, or do you still think it'll be, as we think now originally, the usual suspects, the 2 British drivers and a couple of others in the shake-up?
I think it's going to be a very open season. I thought that all the way along. I mean, you've got the British guys, you've got Vettel obviously retaining championship, you had the Red Bull isn't running to auction, and everybody said that the Ferrari wasn't the guy's one. He's going to win a Grand Prix on it. So when that improves, it's going to make it very, very interesting. I mean, I'm not a great expert on Formula One racing, but on motor racing. But what I see from a betting point of view is I think it's very open. There's 6 world champions in it. You know, and it looks to begin to be something that, you know, before it was whoever's on pole position will win it, and the season was over after 8 races. I don't think that will happen. And if you look at the betting on it now, you've got 4 drivers who are all around about sort of 2-1, 3-1, and you've got Alonso, so 3 drivers around about that kind of price, and Alonso at 10s, which makes it very, very interesting for betting purposes. You know, for me, I look at the Alonso 10-1 kind of thing. Each way Alonso, to me, makes massive appeal because everyone I who tells me about this sport tells me that the Ferrari car isn't nowhere near its best. And if you've got wins under your belt when you're not at your best, then surely 10-1's got to be a knocking bet each way for the first 3, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he got handed that, to be honest, at the weekend. First of all,
he won it though, Flash.
But let me tell you how he won it really, really quickly. First of all, Hamilton went into the pit. He followed Hamilton in. They took 3 seconds too long to put the jack under Hamilton's car. He then came out. He then lost a 10-second lead to Sergio Perez, who was in the Sauber, could have overtook him. Sauber came over the mic and said, "We're happy with second, look after your points," because guess who the engine supplier for Sauber is? Ferrari.
But the point is, though, I mean, I take that. You know, I'm not an expert. Like I say, I'm not an expert on this sport at all. But if they get their things right, and as I see from certain tracks suit the people, and as seasons go on, the car gets better and better. This guy, there's without a doubt, what I know about Fernando Alonso, he's probably the the best driver from natural driving on the track and in the wet conditions that he excels in. But if the car gets better, which everyone says he's going to get better within 4 or 5 races, he's just got points in the bag. The class will, I think, each way 10. I just look at maths, look at statistics, and look at prices. And some firms have gone shorts 4-1 in to win the World Driver Championship, another firm are 10s. Now I just think the 10-1 each way looks a knock first 3.
Interesting. We'll talk about Formula One throughout the season, I'm sure, but we've got to move on to golf because Tiger Woods' 5-shot victory at Bay Hill yesterday has had quite a dramatic effect on the betting for the Masters, which is only less than a couple of weeks away now. Tiger, if you didn't see it, was awesome last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was awesome over the 4 days because he was so mature. He went for pins that he knew he could go for, and when he didn't, he made sure he played safe. He went to the longest part of the green, carried the trouble at every part. He did have a few wonky drives or tee shots, but he won it by 5. And the only 2 people that weren't there were the world's 1 and 2 in McIlroy and Luke Donald. But for me, Tiger's been looking good for about 3 or 4 months, but he just needs to consistently put it together. And he was 10 or 12-1 in October. He's now down to 7-2, 4-1.
7-2, 4-1. It's amazing, Nigel, because I don't think too many of us would have seen this happening maybe a year ago, but all of a sudden he's come to the fore. He's had a couple of near misses, hasn't he, in the last month or 2 months. He's almost hitting it as well as he did at his peak.
Awesome last night, and there's no doubt about it that he's the greatest golfer the game's ever seen. But there's a price and there's a price, and just because he's won a tournament there by 5 shots, I think 7-2 is ridiculously short. I really, really, really do. I just think that the guy's proven that on the Masters is a different kettle of fish. I think Rory McIlroy is obviously playing as well as him consistently. Luke Donald's consistent. I mean, 14-1 Luke Donald and it's compared to 7-2 Tiger Woods. I just don't see there being any value whatsoever. I mean, he's got to win it for you to make money. You don't even get it if he gets a place.
He's got a point, Flash, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes once a bird flies, again, a bit like Man United now at 2-5, you have an opportunity to get on at the right time and not dilly or dally and then watch the price go. But the big thing is, I think everyone who's just interested in golf would like to see Tiger return and put that green jacket on for a 5th time. Now, the price he is now, it's about how he used to be, around 5-1, 11-2 for the Masters, because if he does hit it right on day 1, if he even comes home in a 68, 4 under par, I mean, he could be 3 or 4 off the lead. He's going to be 5-4, 6-4. So if you think that Tiger Woods going to have a good day, you ain't going to see 7-2 or 4-1 anymore in that tournament. Yeah,
Masters coming up. It's coming up on Friday week, Thursday week. I beg your pardon. Thursday week for the Masters. From the Masters to the snooker, because the World Championships get ever nearer, just going to have a cursory glance at the market for this, because we did touch on it last week. The China Open is the current event in play. That's not going to have a massive effect, I don't think, on how they bet for the World Championship. But I reckon it's about as open a World Championship as we've had for a very, very long time. We all remember when Steve Davis dominated it, and then Stephen Hendry, and then Ronnie for a short period. Higgins, of course, but I reckon there's 6 or 7 can win it.
Yeah, there are, and I'll tell you the one that really does stand out. There was a couple that stand out for me. I like Mark Selby at 8-1 because he knows how to get the job done. But just for the sake of world snooker, I'd like to see Ding Zhonghui win it and see him available there at 10-1. Yeah. Because on his day, he is as good as any. And this is what you were saying a minute ago. On their day, they're all as good as each other. Yeah. And if they're like 10% down and the other one's on his game, then they're going to get beat. You no longer get through at the Crucible by just playing okay.
I tell you what would stand out to me there, Nigel. Ronnie O'Sullivan at 7s. The thing with Ronnie is you never quite know which O'Sullivan's going to turn up. And in the days when he was like 2-1 or worse, that was too big a risk to take. But at 7s, he must be worth a gamble, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, if you look at the recent records, there's a lot of opposition to him. I mean, I've got a guy who follows this game. He reckons that Ronnie O'Sullivan's gone at the game, and he just lays him for every single tournament he is anymore.
Bit harsh.
He wouldn't be laying him at 7-1. I mean, he follows the circuit quite well, and he just says that over longer games, his concentration just goes. So he's got. If he was a whole racehorse, he'd have a time form a squiggle next to his name because his concentration isn't there. I mean, the thing is about this is that it is a venue that always the same sort of faces sort of do well at the venue. They know the long formats, and I don't think you can rule out people like Mark Williams, who's done well. He's had a good season, 18-1 on that kind of price. I think Graham Dott, who isn't everybody's cup of tea, but he knows how to do well this, so he's won it, and he got to a couple of finals. He grinds out 40-1. I think you might get a shock a real big price finalist here, and I'd be looking at some big prices. 150 to one shots, 200. Even Stephen Hendry. He's not the same force he was, but is he 150 to one shot to win this tournament? I don't think so.
No,
I certainly Stephen Hendry 150 to one. If I'll back that all day long. Someone in a 10 on that with me, I'd be quite worried to lay 150 to one. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, there have been some big price winners in the past, including Everton won it at a big price a few years back. Right, we've got one part left to go. We're going to look at Flash's 5 from the weekend, and also a fascinating market, how it's changed in the recent times, the next permanent England manager. Back in a moment. You're watching The Punter, and I have to tell you, we had to slightly widen the door of the studio to get Flash Gordon in today, because his 5 for the weekend, how many did you get up?
Yeah, they all popped up quite nicely as well. They're all quite tight games, but they were all good prices. That's why I think, yeah, it went well. I mean, we do 5-4 time as an ACCA. I mean, we've been quite fortunate that many times this year we've had 4 out of 5.
Right.
We've had 5 out of 5 a couple. But yeah, this week we managed to get all 5 again, so it was all good.
Fantastic. And just remind us what your famous 5 were.
We had Newcastle rounded it off yesterday against West Bromwich Albion away. Norwich beat Wolves. Leicester beat Hull. Sheffield Wednesday won away at Orient, and Torquay won at Port Vale. Beat Port Vale, at home to Port Vale.
I mean, Nigel, I think you're still with us. I mean, you've worked in the bookmaking industry. It's very difficult to get 5-timers up, isn't it? And Flash seems to do it with remarkable regularity.
He does it every week. He's a scourge to the bookmakers. He's on fire, the man. He doesn't like to talk about it, do you, Flash?
No, mate, we keep it under wraps, don't we? It was 136 to 1 this week.
There you go. I mean, to be fair, joking aside, his record since we've been doing this punt is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, he's. But the thing is, I like he's tipped up all his old teams there. I'm surprised he won a 17-timer.
Four clubs and Jack Nicklaus.
Joking aside, Flash, I mean, what is the secret to it? Is it just sheer hard work? Is it the old sort of 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, or are there some tricks?
Yeah, well, the tricks that I normally use are that I look for teams who either struggle to score goals, whether they're away or at home. I look for teams that are struggling for confidence. Looking for teams who maybe haven't got a squad and have come off a midweek game on the road. Suspensions, injuries, just a bit of homework really, and a bit of knowledge of knowing. Remember, I was out on the road for 3 or 4 years scouting at all these clubs, and so I know the backbone of most of them. So yeah, it's just trying to put them together on the right day. But also, I don't go for 1 to 2 shots and things like that, because they're the ones that normally trip you up.
They let you down.
So I like the home games to be anything around even money for a home team's good, and away it can be any price.
What's the bookmakers' attitude towards tipsters in general, Nigel? Do they fear them, or do they actually encourage it because it creates more interest?
Well, I have a theory on it, but I don't think that'll be the same as what other bookmakers think. But I think that. If you've got a customer who's following a tipster, or people who follow tipping lines or something like that, I'm all for it, because what happens is that they pay for the tips, they might back a winner, but the thing is then the football's on, or then the tennis is on, and they start playing up their readies. The thing is with punters is that they never know when to quit sometimes, and if they get any information, doesn't necessarily mean they won't be having a bet with their own money. But I'm all for it. I think if you've got a record and people you can provide service, it's great. But the trouble is that when I've worked in call centres or stuff, when someone's put up a tip, 50 calls come through straight away, literally on that second, all for that same thing, and you can basically get, who follows what line, and which people do what, and it's just a question of getting them first. But I mean, with Flash's record, the other thing Flash does is, which was a good point. I mean, he didn't do it this week, but he concentrates it away from the Premier League. And perhaps that's where you get the most value. If you look at the Championship, I mean, there's a guy who's a very famous punter who just all he does is concentrate on Scottish Division 2 and Scottish Division 3, because he knows that home advantage and away advantage makes no difference when you're playing in front of 38 people or 64 people or something like that. So there's certain areas that, if a guy wanted to have £10,000 on Man United to win tonight, great. But if you wanted to back 500 quid on Elgin to beat Berwick, it might be a bit different.
Yeah, well, there are 2 salutary lessons there. I mean, the first one, obviously, is to make sure that you watch on Friday, because we'll be giving you Flash's 5 for the weekend. But I think also what Nigel was saying, discipline has to be the watchword if you're a punter. If you want to be good at it and you want to make money doing it.
Yeah, leakage is a problem that most people have, because what they'll do is they might have discipline in certain fields, i.e. golf or something else. They get their winnings, sit down, cup of tea, football comes on. Oh, well, I've just fancy it. And what they do is, I've won 100 quid, so I'll invest 80 of it. And then before they know, they've invested 100 quid, but they just invested 120 in something they know nothing about.
Yeah.
So they've not got no level, and they get a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah, okay. One more market I want to have a look at, because this is fascinating. The market for the next permanent, important word in this market, England manager. And it's all come to the head again this week, Flash, because Glenn Hoddle has said he's really interested. He misses it. He wants to be back involved. Well, he was hardly mentioned in the market before. All of a sudden, it's amazing how that can turn the market on something where it wasn't initially a big player. Now he is. Has this got any legs, do you think, at all, Glenn Hoddle? Possible?
None. Absolutely
Why
none.
do you say that?
Because where's he been? I mean, he's been doing his academy in Spain for so long, and I don't see that his credentials with the FA are going to hold him in a good stead.
But people will say, though, that when he had the job last time, he did a pretty good job, and the reason that he left was nothing to do with his the football.
But yeah, but he still left, and they can't take a risk that that's going to happen again. Secondly, the game's moved on. I mean, you've seen how Kenny Dalglish is struggling, because Kenny Dalglish done a great job. They won a double last time at Liverpool. He had that big spell out. He's come back. Yes, he's won one of the cups, but they're struggling. And I would say that for me, it's got to be Harry. And if it ain't Harry, then I fancy it's going to be one of the boys from abroad.
I just get a feeling, Nigel, that from people I speak to at grounds, of journalists and other little sources, there seems to be some kind of move away from Harry Redknapp being the supposed cast iron certainty that he appeared to be maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. Is that fair or not?
Yeah, definitely is the case. I mean, everybody you speak to in football says, they want Harry to be it, but the betting doesn't suggest that, because you still back him around about 4 to 7 on the betting exchanges, and usually, if this was such a done thing or something that's certain to happen, it'd be a lot shorter. And if you look on the boxes on the exchanges, all people want to lay him rather than back him. So I think it's very far from being done. I personally think that we'll go. I don't think there's any rush. And I think that there's a lot of managers, a lot of big jobs at the end of the season, from abroad, at home as well. And I think a lot of the managers want to see what's available, who's out of contract before they make such a big decision, because they can't really afford to get it wrong again, can they? They've got to get the right person, right appointment. And I think we'll go with Roy Hodgson and Stuart Pearce for the Euros. And we've basically sort of written off our chances, actually. We'll go with that. We'll put a team out there, and we'll look at it at the end of the season after the Euros. And for that case, I think that Harry then becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think they're waiting to see what happens at Barcelona, what happens at Real Madrid, what happens at all the big clubs before they make the decision on who's going to be the next permanent manager. Because, like I say, they can't afford to get it wrong, and it's certainly not going to be Glenn Hoddle.
All right, no, that's okay. All right, Nigel, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. Your contribution really interesting as ever. Flash, fantastic five-timer at the weekend.
Yeah, we'll go again this week.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, we'll go again. Hopefully we'll be close again this week.
All right, brilliant. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and remember, whatever you do, keep it Sports Tonight Live. From all of us here, bye-bye.
Stay ahead of the game with Sports Tonight Live. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for Sports Tonight Live on Facebook and like our fan page. Follow Sports Tonight TV on Twitter and tweet us your thoughts and opinions. Sports Tonight Live, it's the platform for the fans.
And only on goal difference. They played tonight. We'll talk about that game in a minute. But if you were Alex Ferguson sitting at home on Saturday evening watching that game from the Britannia, and someone had offered you a draw, as far as City were concerned at the start, you'd probably have taken it.
Oh, and Alex Ferguson would have took anything other than an overwhelming Man City win. But I tell you, it went 1-0 with quarter of an hour to go, and then the Man City are the ones that actually got the luck with the deflection. Otherwise, Begovic would have probably saved it.
And Manchester United, of course, have got a real chance tonight to make a statement, go back 3 points clear and we'll show you the odds for that game coming up shortly. There should be goals, I would imagine. It's a great chance for United to push on again here.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, and we were just saying that when Man United get a sniff of the Sunday roast, they all want to sit round the table and eat. They don't pass up the opportunity of a free meal.
Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to another episode of The Punter. I'm Trevor Harris alongside Gordon Watson. Flash to his mates. We're going to try and find you some value on a whole assortment of markets. And of course, we have to start with football. Flash, another really interesting weekend in the Barclays Premier League. Another incident where Man City have dropped points. Roberto Mancini's lost his cool. Wouldn't even shake hands with Tony Pulis afterwards. There is a school of thought, however, from some experts I've heard, that says that's 1 point gained rather than 2 dropped. How do you look at it from City's point of view?
That's 2 points dropped. Anywhere else in the season, I said, like, if it was in the first, which it is tonight, Fulham have got one of the worst away records. Man United have got the opportunity to eradicate a 4-goal deficit regarding the goal difference between them and Man City. They can do it all in one go tonight.
I think Fulham, it's just 8 goals on their travels. I think even the world's ugliest man scores more often than that. Let's have a look at the table if we can in a moment. The Premier League table after the weekend, because there are so many little subplots. It's not just the Man United, Man City. We've got the race for the Champions League spots. Arsenal seem to be winning that at the moment. And of course, mass is happening at the bottom as well. It's a fantastic end to the season, potentially.
Oh, it is. I mean, because now all of a sudden you've obviously got the two boys, or the two big clubs that are fighting out at the top. And then you've got the 3 London clubs. You've now got Newcastle in the mix after their great win yesterday at West Brom. So after the season, it would have been a point gained. But at this stage of the season, you cannot drop any points. You've got to look to win every single game because you've got to assume that your closest rival, in this case Man United, they could well go and do that.
And what did you think of Tony Pulis' well, he was fine, but Mancini's damning criticism of Stoke, saying that they were basically a roughhouse team and they muscled City out of it. Any truth in those kind of allegations or not for you?
None at all. I didn't think there was hardly a bad tackle in the whole game, and probably the worst one went unpunished in Gareth Barry getting in late on
Whelan.
On Whelan, yeah, because I mean that was a potential ankle breaker. Apart from that, no, I thought it was a really clean game that was just well contested, and I just think he jumped onto the Stoke bandwagon because I've seen Stoke a lot more physical than they were at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean obviously Manchester United pushed out the second.
They're now thinking that they may be able to dispose Chelsea, and if Tottenham don't kick on and start winning a few more games, Newcastle will think that they could probably catch Tottenham as well.
And look how the goal difference is beginning to even up as well. 50 for Manchester City, 46 for United. With this game in hand tonight, they could easily stick 5 past Fulham and suddenly 3 points better off and a better goal difference too.
Yeah, I know. I personally think it's curtains already for Man City. I think Man United have just waited in the wings, waited for Man City to slip up. They've slipped up once too often, and now Man United will show them a clean pair of heels.
Well, the top of the table we've seen is fascinating. From a punting point of view, it makes it really interesting. Flash has tipped up United for a long while, and they're now big odds on. It's almost as interesting, and if you support one of these clubs, nerve-wracking, at the other end of the Premier League, in the